Hi everyone, thank you for coming to week 8 of our virtual event series. I'm Hayley, the marketing manager, and these are my colleagues Amy and Emma. And it's the final week of our 8-week series, and this is all about being in a fostering family and seeing both sides of the spectrum. So, Amy, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm one of the social workers at Nexus.
And Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm also one of the supervising social workers at Nexus.
So it's going to be a bit different this week to what we've done in previous weeks. So we've had a bit of presentation and some slides going through some of the topics, but this one is more personal. Both Emma and Amy have grown up in their fostering family from both sides, and it was just more of a conversation and more about hearing their experiences. So Amy, we're going to start with you. So tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so my mum and dad were foster carers, so I'm a birth child of foster carers. I was about 13 when they started fostering, and they fostered for just under 15 years. In that time, they cared for just over 50 children, so that was sort of daycare, respite, emergency, and short-term placements. We never did long-term, but kind of anything else we did. We mostly did under twos, so we cared for lots of newborn babies who were kind of withdrawing from drugs and alcohol. We did have a couple of older ones, but generally my parents sort of specialised in caring for the under twos.
And is it something that they had always wanted to do? Did they know somebody that wanted to foster, or is it something that they knew much about?
Yeah, so our next door neighbour when I was growing up was a foster carer. Although she fostered teenagers. And right from being quite small, I remember pestering them next door to see if they wanted to come out and play with me. So yeah, fostering's kind of I've always been around fostering. And I'm an only child. I didn't have any brothers or sisters. And fostering was something that my parents had considered for quite a while, but wanted to wait until I was just a little bit older. And I think in the end, I actually said to them, well, can we foster like our neighbour? And then that was it really. It kind of went from there.
So you obviously had that discussion and you knew what fostering was, which was great. Obviously you were a lot younger then, so can you remember how they told you about that they were going to do it?
Gosh, I can't, because I think it was me that kind of initiated the conversation. And then they just kind of told me that, they'd given people a call, and then there would be somebody coming out to the home to come and visit us. I mean, gosh, it was so long ago, but that's kind of my rough memory of it.
And were they working at the same time? Or did they give up work when they started fostering?
So my mum didn't work; she was a full-time foster carer, but my dad did work.
And it must have been strange at the time having children come in. Can you remember much about the first child coming in and how your family, did your family dynamic between you and your parents change?
Yeah, definitely. So it was kind of a whole mixture of emotions, really. It was exciting and a little bit scary, kind of all at the same time. You're having, a stranger come into your home. So our first placement was a newborn baby. So they were just a couple of hours old. So I guess it was a little bit different than, a child who's, kind of walking and talking. And yeah, the dynamic did change. Obviously, caring for a newborn baby, the time that my parents were spending with me was obviously a little bit less because they were needing to care for a newborn baby. I think because I was 13, 14, there were certain things that I was able to kind of help out with. So, whether that might be feeding or, folding up their clothes, which being a 14-year-old, I quite enjoy doing, like putting all their clothes away, that kind of thing. So I would get involved kind of where it was appropriate, which was quite nice.
Do you have a standout memory from the time that they were fostering?
Oh my goodness. There is so many. Maybe not from when they were fostering as such, but we cared for a little girl for 2 years. She came to us as a newborn, and then her journey was quite complex. And in the end, she went on to be adopted. And we kind of didn't hear anything from her for about 7 years. And then one day, her adoptive parents gave my dad a ring to ask if they could come and visit us. And when she came back to visit, she remembered all of us. She remembered where everything was in the home, which was really lovely. And we still keep in contact with her now, and she's actually coming to my wedding next year. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So that's probably like my fondest memory, I'd say. And like that relationship has been, like really important.
Oh, it's giving me goosebumps.
Oh,
That's amazing. Can you remember kind of the things that, as you say, you had a few different children come and live with you? How were you kind of getting ready for them? Was there things that obviously you had a wide range of ages as well? So is there anything that you particularly done? Were you obviously presumably felt excited every time, you had a new child with you, but were you kind of conscious of actively doing anything in particular to make them feel welcome?
again, because we had such small ones primarily, that was a little bit different. It wasn't like they were kind of toddlers or children that were aware as such. But certainly when we did have the children who were a little bit older, I would make sure that there was kind of toys and things in the living room. I mean, my parents were obviously doing that as well. Yeah. And we would always ask ahead, kind of what their favourite food was and like certain cartoons, so that we could make sure that we had things in the home that we knew that they were going to enjoy. So
And that's really important, isn't it? Because we know that children come into care, they're nervous, they're anxious, they're scared. 9 times out of 10, they don't want to be there. So actually, all those things of kind of familiarity of their favourite cartoon or food is really important to them, isn't it?
yeah, definitely.
I'm just going to share a video of our foster carer, Tim. So his birth child, Phoebe, is really important, plays a really active role within their fostering family. So this is just a bit about what he has to say.
We approached it with her and she said, no, wait. And because at the time we were living in a property that wasn't suitable, and she said, we'd have to move, we'd have to do this, we'd have to do that. And it was just those general conversations. She wasn't, although she said no way, she wasn't totally against it. She just, I guess, was afraid of change, like us all. None of us like change, really. And so over the time we talked to her, and our assessing social worker very much went through with her, met with her on a one-to-one basis to talk to her about her concerns and her fears and her excitement as well. And then our first placement came, and she just absolutely changed. She just loved it. She, if I'm totally honest, and she'll probably kill me for saying this, but she struggles from time to time with sharing us, even though she's 21. But she also is such a big part of the team. We say we're a team of four. There's my wife, my daughter, myself, and our three-legged rescue dog from Bosnia, Danny, because we are a team, and it's really, really helped us. So because Phoebe's 21 now and she's very mature, she may occasionally look after the children while my wife and I go out for a date night. And she's just a huge part of the team, and it would be so much harder without her.
And he makes a good point, doesn't he? Because birth children play a huge role, as we said a minute ago, about making them feel welcome. How important is that? In obviously you're social worker now, but how important is that that welcoming and that feeling when they, the role of a birth child at that moment?
Yeah, no, it's really important, and they have to be on board. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But I guess if they have got any questions, speak to the assessing social worker. There are people within Nexus like myself who could come out or have a phone call or a Teams call with them and answer any questions that they might have by somebody who's kind of lived it. I would say that it's completely normal for a birth child to feel a little bit like, oh gosh, like, this is a bit scary. As long as they've got somebody that they can talk to about that and ask those questions, then hopefully we can kind of offer them some reassurance.
Do you think, so growing up in a fostering family, has that changed your outlook on life at all? Obviously now you're a social worker, so I'm presuming that has influenced it slightly. So tell us about your journey coming into Nexus.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I would be sat here today if my parents weren't foster carers. That's 100% shaped who I am today and the career that I chose to follow. It was the little girl who I spoke about earlier, because of there were some challenges within her case where certain things kind of had been left adrift. That kind of really like motivated me to want to be a social worker that kind of made a difference. So yeah, definitely my experiences have led me to be here today.
Thanks, Amy. So we're going to play another clip from Chris, who's our very first foster carer. And again, she really actively involves her birth children. And this is just a bit of advice from Chris.
It doesn't happen straight away. It takes work, it takes effort. And for some, it goes on for a while, but they do usually adapt quite well. Children are very resilient. The only resistance you may sometimes find could be from the older ones who, you know, quite naturally are going to feel anxious. I mean, how would you feel moving into a complete stranger's house?
So that kind of leads us on to Emma, who has also grown up within a fostering family. Emma, do you want to give us a bit of background of you?
Yeah, so I kind of come from the opposite side of Amy in that I was actually a foster child. So I'm care experienced. I was placed into care by the local authority when I was 15 years old. So I was quite old old for a child coming into care. So I was, yeah, quite a bit older, and I went into a fostering family initially, and it kind of happens overnight. It's not really explained to you very well. Well, that was my experience. And also it's worth bearing in mind, this would have been 16, 17 years ago now. So things have obviously come on a lot, and, you know, I'm hopeful that the system has improved since my time. But yeah, so I was placed with local authority foster carers, and it broke down after about 8 weeks, and then I was placed into a residential children's home. I'm also a foster carer myself as well now, and I'm fostering a 14-year-old currently. So it's worth pointing out there that not all teenagers. Yeah.
Well, it's full circle, isn't it? Because that's influenced what you will now want to do with your life, hasn't it? Because you didn't have a great experience with your foster carers. So what improvements, what do you think went wrong at that time?
So obviously this wouldn't, I believe if I'd have been in play a fostering agency rather than a local authority, and obviously this is from my perspective, I would have had somebody that could have advocated for me, and the foster carer wouldn't have been able to maybe care for me in the way she did. I don't think she maybe got the training she needed, and I don't think she understood me very well, and I don't think she understood how to integrate me into the family properly. So essentially she was a single carer. She had 2 sons of her own who were younger than me, so they were kind of like primary school age, and she very much segregated me from her children. I think she kind of felt maybe I would impact them, or I'm not too sure, but they would have separate meal times to me. I would have separate food to them. She was a childminder during the day, and she was very fearful of me being anywhere near the children she was caring for, and I think she felt that I don't think she necessarily understood that I was also a child. So she would expect me to be out of the house while she was childminding, which obviously didn't then make me feel particularly welcome. And I would then have different meal times to her children because I wouldn't be allowed home until sort of 6 o'clock in the evening, which obviously would never be allowed now. I think it's just important I keep highlighting because I don't want people to think that that's a realistic expectation. So yeah, I don't think she was given the right maybe information or training to understand what it would necessarily mean to welcome a child, and especially a teenager, because when you're 15 years old and you've been with your parents, that's a long time to experience, in my case, kind of domestic violence, neglect, substance and alcohol abuse. So I had been through more than you know, she probably had in her life, and to then plonk me in a nice middle class family's home with a single carer in quite a well-to-do area, nowhere near my friends, nowhere near my support, you know, where my support was, it was a lot. And I don't think it wasn't easy for me to just fit in into the kind of space that she had carved out for me. So she had very clear boundaries as to where she felt I was allowed to be and go. And I think she had preconceived maybe ideas of what a teenager in care must, you know, like, and I think she felt like she had to protect her children from me. But actually the reality is I had been raising my younger siblings before I came there. I was actually a very caring young person, a very capable young person. I'd been essentially raising myself for the majority of my life. And I think if I'd have been given a chance to integrate into that family, I probably, you know, could have done quite well there. But yeah, I think it just for me, I never felt welcome. I felt like I was a burden to her, and I felt like she wanted to keep me kind of separate from her family. So it ended after about 8 weeks because I didn't want to go back there. Basically, I left and I called my social worker and I refused to go back. And then that was when the decision was made that actually, because I'm a teenager, it's hard to find a fostering family that will take a teenager me into a residential home. So
tell us about, I think it's so I don't know if you can, my internet, I don't know if it's my internet or yours, but it's a bit bitty, so we'll keep going with it and hopefully we can understand each other.
Okay.
Tell us about if you're happy to, tell us a bit about your experience in the residential, because what we're trying to, you know, there is a national shortage of foster carers, and every agency and local authority are trying to recruit foster carers because there are more children in care than there are carers. And it's a case of, well, you know, where would they go? If there's no foster carers, where would they go? But what we're trying to do is for them to not go to residential care, because a foster carer's home is more like a home environment, home space. You get to do the same things as a family would, and that's not necessarily the same in residential care, is it?
No, so residential care is for me, I was in a house of 6 other children, ages 13 to 17, because at 17 you have to leave just before your 18th birthday, but I'll get to that point of the story afterwards. And you basically have a rotation of staff. So staff will come in and every 8 hours they change over. You have your own room, and you are pretty much left to your own devices most of the time. So my experience was it actually impacted my education quite seriously, because my school was a 20-minute drive from the residential home that the local authority placed me in, and a staff member wasn't able to drop me every day, and the local authority needed to organise me to have a bus pass, but that never happened. So I used to try and call my social worker. There was no adult that could advocate for me. And when you have a key worker in the residential home, but you only see them once a week. And if they don't help you and they're too busy, or they don't send the emails, they don't chase the social worker, there's essentially no one to advocate for you. So in the end, what happened was I ended up missing the entire year 11 year. I missed prom because there was no one to sort of help me get a dress or anything like that. I missed all kind of like social events, last day of school. Taxis were arranged to take me to set my exams, and that was pretty much it. But obviously I'd missed an entire year of school. So that was really, really difficult to do. And obviously it's not very, a residential home isn't the sort of place you can sit and do your homework in the evenings. It's not quiet. They're banging, you know, we bang on each other's doors. There's arguments, there's, you know, there's fights sometimes, there's, you know, it is quite chaotic. It's a very chaotic environment to live in. And I think it's very difficult that, you know, there wasn't even a desk in my room for me to be able to study. I had a wardrobe, a chest of drawers, and a single bed. And that was kind of it. It's very, the easiest way I can describe it is it is run a little bit like a boarding school / prison, because you get room checks, you get staff, paroling around, and there's, you are just a number. Like, there's a board in the office, and they have to keep track of who's in, because not all the staff know your name. So there's a high turnover of staff. There's lots of agency workers. So you spend a lot of time sort of staff going, oh, which one are you? What's your name? You know, like, it's not kind of somebody that actually is there to care for you, which is why even when I was living in the residential, I remember saying to myself, when I'm older, I'm going to foster, and I'm going to foster teenagers, because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. And it's what made me want to become a social worker as well, because I still to this day cannot believe my social worker, knowing I had nobody else, wouldn't return my phone calls. And I think this is why, for me, private agencies have such an important role, because we, as supervisors, I'm sure she agrees, we will advocate for our carers and for the children in their care, sure that their voice is heard and they don't get forgotten. Because I think that's what happened to me. I think I was placed in the residential, and I think I was very much forgotten. And it's just lucky that I'm quite a resilient, determined and stubborn person, that, you know, I managed to get myself now, because the residential home for me ended 3 months before my 18th birthday, which just happens to be November. So right before Christmas, I was again removed from everything I knew. A social worker that I didn't know came to pack up all my stuff with me. And then I was dropped off at an adults hostel. And that hostel had 30 adults in it. And that was mother and babies, people with substance and alcohol abuse issues, people that had just got out of prison. And I was placed in that, and I lived there from the age of 17 until I was 19, when I got my social housing. And that was when I was able to restart my life and go back to education, retake my GCSEs, take my A levels, and get myself to university. So I suppose the long-winded thing I'm trying to say is, not having a foster carer set me back years and years. If I'd have been in a foster placement, I'd have been able to stay with them, hopefully do stay put, and they could have supported me through university, and I'd have had someone. Whereas I wasn't able to start that journey until my early 20s, because I had to retake my GCSEs, because there was no one to take me to school. So I had a fair shot at taking them. And there was no one to support me, advise me, kind of guide me. I was kind of left to my own devices, really. And an adult hostel is certainly not the sort of place that you can be going to college, or again, because yet again you're in this chaotic environment where you're probably not going to sleep most nights because people are arguing, and you know, you don't feel safe. Essentially, it's not the sort of environment that you can get yourself to college. And where my hostel was, it would have cost me, I think it was around 30 or 40 pounds a week in bus fares to get to and from college, and that was all I had to live on at the time. So I wouldn't have had enough to eat and get to college.
And I think it's really important to say that teenagers in care are the same as teenagers that aren't in care. And I think it's really important to say teenagers on the whole, it's a really tricky part of life, isn't it? It's exams, it's puberty, it's stresses of trying to think of jobs and leaving school and growing up, and every teenager is exactly the same, you know, in that sense. Is it that's their common denominator, is that they're not in care because they're naughty. They're in care because they've been through, or maybe have experienced something quite traumatic, and it's not safe for them to be at home. So I think there's a very big stereotypical image that teenagers are in care because they're naughty, and that's just not the case. They don't know how to deal with and understand the trauma that isn't, you know, that they haven't brought on themselves. And so they're needing that, as you say, that support system behind them to help them understand that, to understand boundaries, to go through routine, to put them in good stead for future life. And it's just really sad, isn't it? Because there's because they do have that stereotypical image, but actually they just need support like any other teenager, any other child, really. It's just that they just need that support network, don't they? Can you remember how you felt, just going back a bit to when you went into foster care, can you remember how you felt kind of going into someone else's home?
Yeah, absolutely terrified. You don't get told necessarily. I mean, now we try and do it a little bit better, where we'll show pictures of the room and, you know, show pictures of who the foster carers were. Back then that didn't happen, and that still doesn't always happen now, because it's reliant on the local authority doing that with the child. And in my experience as a social worker, it can't happen sometimes in emergency situations, but also it doesn't happen for staffing reasons sometimes. So you're literally in the social worker's car on the way to a house. You have no idea where you're going. You have no idea what they're going to be like. You're worried if they're going to like you. You're worried, you know, what your room's going to look like. Will you be near your friends? Will you be allowed to see your friends? It's just complete fear and anxiety. And it's like, the only way I can describe it is it's like moving, because obviously most people have experienced moving house, and that's obviously incredibly stressful as an adult, and you're worried, have I made the right decision? Have we got the right house? Have, you know, is everything going to fall through? Is the roof going to fall off? In those, you know, dramatic anxiety induced moments. It's like that, but as a child who actually doesn't understand what you could be fearful of. So you're in that car and you're scared, but you can't even articulate why you're scared. It's just it's really, really terrifying.
So what advice would you give
and you're reliant on the sorry,
there's a delay. What advice would you give to carers or to people thinking about becoming a foster carer?
So my advice would be warning, but also recognize that they are going to be terrified, and helicoptering around them and things like that might induce the anxiety. So when I welcomed my young person, it was quite eye-opening for me, actually, because it reminded me a lot of my experience, and because she was a similar age to me, it brought up a lot of memories for me that I'd probably forgotten. But I kind of did the approach of, I went slow and steady, and then kind of came back and didn't want to spook her. So I gave her space. I showed her her room, you know, welcomed her in. I did a little welcome box. So I had a mug with her initials on it. And I was like, oh, this is what you'll have your tea in the morning. Do you like tea? Do you like coffee? Do you like, you know, juice? We can put juice in it. And, you know, had those sort of conversations. I was able to talk to the social worker and find out what snack she likes. So I put some of her snack, because I remember being terrified and starving my first night, and I was frightened to ask for any food. So you just sit in your bedroom, absolutely starving, really thirsty, and you know, it's not your house, so you can't go downstairs and just help yourself to a glass of water. So I remember saying to her, there's the glasses, help yourself to water if you're thirsty, you've got snacks in your room, but also this is what, you know, you're okay to help yourself to. And then sort of gave her some room, time to unpack. And then after that, I went back up to kind of introduce myself again, sort of just be like, you know, don't feel like you've got to stay up here, because I think that's what happened to me. She was kind of like, this is your room, okay, we'll leave you to it. And then you feel like you can't come back out again. It's so awkward. So I kind of went back up and was like, do you want to come downstairs? And, you know, I was like, oh, we're watching this. And I was like, it's okay if you don't want to, though, you know, like, it's don't go in too hard, but also be available. So it's that kind of be available, be accessible, don't be suffocating, I suppose, would be my advice. Yeah, it worked pretty well for us. It resulted in her watching a movie with us her first night. And yeah, it kind of broke the ice for everyone.
And can you I was going to have another question, then we'll do that. We'll watch the show reel, and then we will come back. So if anybody's got any questions for Amy and Emma, please do put them in the Q&A, and then we'll watch the show reel, and then we'll come back to them afterwards.
Having spoken to some foster carers that we knew, we were advised to go with an agency.
But my good friend was with Nexus at the time.
Yeah.
So that was a real pull as well.
We also spent quite a lot of time reviewing
You did a lot of
the
research.
content, reading about the policies of each of the agencies. And I remember seeing the Nexus website and reading it, and it really portrayed this kind of child-first approach. It was the children were the centre of the focus, and I think that's hard to do because obviously agencies are built around support and infrastructure for families and carers. But I really liked the language that was used, and I really liked the way that they spoke about the children, and it moved me a little bit. It kind of made me feel like inspired. This is what I want to do. I want us to be able to offer this to children.
We were recommended by friends that foster for them. We did a lot of research, but they came out the best with Ofsted, and the support's been brilliant, always on the phone. Plus other foster carers within the agency are really friendly, and it's like a big family really. We just all help each other.
So Nexus bought out our agency a little while ago, and I was very concerned about it because I thought our agency were great, and they were. And we came over to Nexus, and we were assured that we'd get plenty of referrals and lots of support. And I can honestly say it's the best thing that's happened in our fostering journey. We've had immense support from when you phone up and talk to the office to the girls there are great. We have quite a laugh with them now. We've built up a relationship with them. It just feels like the whole team is on board supporting you. So we've had great support. As I've mentioned before, we have team around the child meetings. So we've got a clinician, we've got the therapeutic lead, we've got our supervisor social worker, the child social worker. So there's an awful lot of people involved, but the support has been amazing. And sadly, we did have one placement that broke down, and even within that, the team were just amazingly supportive of helping us navigate those very tricky waters and checking in on us to make sure we were okay as well as the child after the child had left us, which I thought was amazing. They really do care about you, and the management of Nexus are amazing too, because they just really want to know what it's like at the coalface. What can they do to make things better? And they really have got a genuine concern. So much so that I've joined the Carers Advisory Board, it's called, where we meet with the senior management team to just share our thoughts and feedback from our colleagues about any issues that they may have.
Often you're having to make decisions very quickly. There's a lot thrown onto your plate to decide about. And you have the best intentions, but there's a lot of stuff that can be overwhelming for you, and so you have to be quite careful about what you say yes to. But the support of Nexus and our social worker kind of guiding us through that and making us feel empowered about making decisions was a big part of that. We were a bit nervous about taking on a placement with no experience, but we were empowered by Nexus in terms of seeing what we could offer.
What we did, we spoke to lots of people, and we found that really helpful. We've got quite a lot of friends who foster and some who have adopted as well, so we spoke to them about finding out what it's like every day, what's a typical day look like. And the answer we found is that there's no typical day, because things can change on a day-to-day basis. But I would say get talking to folk, but don't do what I do. Don't leave it too long. Do it, because the rewards far outweigh any of the hardships along the way.
Never assume, and always, when things aren't going as you would expect them to do,
Take a step back.
yeah, and walk a mile in their shoes, because you've probably had a good life, and you've got values and boundaries. Lots of these children have never had those type of things. Never give up, persevere.
My advice for anyone who was looking to become a foster carer is do your research. Always, number one, sit down with your family, your children, and tell them what you would like to do, why you want to do it, and ask them what are their concerns, or if there are any concerns. Don't have to rush, but just give them a moment to think and let them come to you and tell you what they would like. You can always work around them. You will need to work around them, but you need them on board. You need their support. So you're not going to become a foster carer on your own. You're going to be a fostering family. So that's all of you together. It's so, so important. Then you go to the agency, or you go to a friend, or you go to anybody that you know is fostering, and you get as much information as you possibly can. And believe you me, it is something you will absolutely love. I adore it. I have done it for such a long time, and I've never looked back. And my family have enjoyed it with me. It's the best thing that I ever did. It brings so much joy and happiness to you. And when you see the children being settled and going on to a better life, what more could you want?
The advice I would give people who want to become foster carers is don't think, do it. It's so rewarding, and as long as you've got a good support network and family around you, just enjoy making a difference to somebody's life.
I love watching them, because the thing is, you know, we can sit here and talk to you about fostering, and we can talk to you about Nexus, but the carers for us are they are the heart of what we do. And as we said earlier, unfortunately, there are lots of children in care, and there's not enough foster carers to support them. So, you know, if you'd like for more information, our contact details are there. We're, we can answer all your questions. Hopefully you've been able to join so you can see all the different topics that we've had each week. But yeah, look at our website, pop us an email, give us a call. We're able to answer all of your questions. Amy, what advice from a social worker's point of view, what advice would you give to somebody thinking about fostering?
I would say if you're thinking about it, definitely give us a call and ask those questions. You're bound to have them. And just explore into it. And if after you've asked those questions, you feel like perhaps now isn't the right time, come back to us when it feels like it is the right time.
Absolutely. And Emma, what I was going to say earlier was you seem to have decided quite early on that you were going to become a foster carer, didn't you? Because you can see how resilient you are. How does that feel, kind of taking that journey to become a foster carer? And how has Nexus supported you in that?
So Nexus have been amazing. They've supported me even before fostering. They supported me to become a social worker. So I started with Nexus. I wanted to be an outreach worker. I was putting myself through university. And yeah, they just took me under their wing, similar to how we treat our children. And I think they invested in me. They paid for me to do my social work degree. They've supported me. Nexus has become my family. And then they've supported me on the next part of my journey to become a foster carer as well, which has been amazing. And it's the training that I've had here, the support that I've had. I've learned so much since coming to Nexus. Obviously, I've gone from an outreach worker to a supervising social worker and foster carer. So you can imagine that journey. I've learned so much. And in popping back to the question you kind of asked, Amy, I think as a foster carer, because obviously, unfortunately, I couldn't foster with Nexus, when you're doing your research, you really need to look at what sort of support and training. The training is the number one. And I think that's one thing that we really do well at Nexus. And it's so frustrating. Well, I'm lucky because I get it as staff, so it's fine. But it's one thing that really frustrated me when I was looking as a foster carer. You need therapeutic, bespoke training to be a foster carer. The children and young people that are going to be living in your home have been through so much. And if you've not experienced that in your personal life, and even if you have, you'll really struggle to understand what where they're coming from, and you'll be focusing on the behaviours rather than the reasons behind behaviours, which I think is something we do so well at Nexus. We really support our carers to be therapeutic in their approach and not just see, oh, she's refusing to go to school, or oh, he's, you know, refusing to tidy his room and he doesn't want to come down for dinner in the evenings. We look for the why. What's the behaviour behind that? Is there an anxiety there? Is there an underlying support need? Let's talk to a clinician. Let's work with a clinician. Let's put that support in place. And I've seen children, because I've been with Nexus nearly 6 years now, and I've seen children just flourish in the care of our foster carers, and I'm so proud of the work we do and the work our carers do. And I think we go above and beyond to make sure that they have the training to allow them to be the best foster carers they can be, because ultimately when you've got the best training, you've got the best chance of doing a really good job, and it really is the best job in the world. Like, you know, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, as you can tell, and I'll stop going on now, but you know, it is.
There's a good point to end on, Emma. Then it's the point that being a foster carer is the best job in the world. I think that's a great point to end on. So thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. As I say, we've got information on our website, so please just get in touch. We'll be able to answer your questions, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.